Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry there's a short delay in the arrival of the minister. Just a few more minutes. I request for your patience. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, may I request you to kindly stand up to welcome the Honorable Education Minister, Shri Dharmendra Pradhan ji. अब मैं विशिष्ट अतिथियों को दीप प्रज्वलन के लिए आमंत्रित करती हूँ. Ladies and gentlemen, kindly be seated. We will begin today's evening with the lamp lighting ceremony. Thank you very much. May I kindly request Dr. Ashwin Fernandez to escort the guests to the podium and the stage, please. Thank you very much. The launch ceremony will begin with the national anthem. आप सभी से विनयपूर्वक प्रार्थना करती हूँ कि कार्यक्रम की शुरुआत के लिए आप सभी राष्ट्रगान के लिए खड़े हो जाएं. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, माननीय मुख्य अतिथि शिक्षा मंत्री श्री धर्मेंद्र प्रधान जी, विशिष्ट अतिथिगण, देवी और सज्जनों, आज के पुस्तक विमोचन कार्यक्रम इंडिया's Knowledge Supremacy, the New Dawn by Dr. Ashwin Fernandez, Regional Director QS Quarterly, Simmons CEO QSIG में आप सभी का स्वागत है और मैं आपका अभिनंदन करती हूँ. I also take this opportunity to thank and welcome Professor Dr. Pankaj Mittal, Secretary General Association of Indian Universities, Professor Dr. Virendra Singh Chauhan, former Chairperson of the UGC and NAAC, Professor Dr. C. Rajkumar, founding Vice Chancellor of OP Jindal Global University. We thank you all for joining us for this special launch. अब हम लॉन्च होने वाली किताब इंडिया's Knowledge Supremacy, the New Dawn by Dr. Ashwin Fernandez के परिचय और सार के बारे में जानकारी प्राप्त करेंगे. डॉक्टर अश्विन फर्नांडिस.
माननीय शिक्षा मंत्री महोदय श्री धर्मेंद्र प्रधान जी, आदरणीय अतिथिगण, देवी और सज्जनों, I'm really honored to be in your presence today for the launch of the book of my book, India's Knowledge Supremacy, the New Dawn. It is so ironic that this book is launching in the venue which signifies the rich history of our once great higher education legacy, Nalanda. Ladies and gentlemen, the motivation to write this book came after a very important meeting in 2021 with the Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi and the CEO of QS. I was amazed with the passion and zeal of the Honorable Prime Minister when he was driving the message of India being a Vishwaguru. Soon after, I had the privilege of meeting the Honorable Minister of Education, Shri Pradhanji, who inspired me with his thoughts on strengthening the education sector in India and making our own footprint in the world. We had to decolonize our education sector and bring back the glory. And our National Education Policy 2020 was the way forward to this. This book is not about NEP and to celebrate NEP, but it delves deep into the evolution of higher education in India through history. Ancient universities such as Takshashila and Nalanda once attracted students from all over the world and helped develop some of the brightest minds. However, invasions, annexation, loot, and colonization had a significant impact on India's knowledge capital. The alterations in teaching buried the original and enriched Indian educational system. Although we gained independence from the British rule in 1947, we continued to uphold English education until the game-changing National Education Policy of 2020 was released. In recent years, the Indian government, under the dynamic leadership of Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi, has taken significant initiatives to improve the education sector and make it more progressive. We can see the impact already. Despite its rich history and education, India's higher education sector has traditionally been rigid and fragmented, with students often required to conform to strict disciplinary structures. Additionally, there has been a lack of emphasis on research at universities and colleges, coupled with a shortage of competitive peer-reviewed research funding across several disciplines. This has actually resulted in a poor representation of Indian institutions in the global rankings, and we don't have even a single institution in the top 100 of any global reputed world university ranking. Dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, this book is my contribution to motivate Indians in India and our diaspora abroad to understand where we were, what happened to us, and how we are progressing. The book provides an insightful and thought-provoking look into India's rising status as a superpower and is suitable for all age groups. I'm so happy that Bloomsbury Publishing, a leading independent publishing house with a reputation for excellence, has published a book, which itself is quite remarkable considering this is my first book. I do hope that the launch today brings back some glory and recognition to our higher education sector, and we all can be motivated to bringing India to its knowledge supremacy status. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
Thank you, Dr. Fernandez. I call upon you once again to formally welcome our chief guest, the Union Minister for Education, Mr. Dharmendra Pradhan, and to felicitate him formally and unveil the book. Mr. Ashok will now also formally felicitate Dr. Ashwin Fernandez. कृपया अपना स्थान ग्रहण करें। आइए अब हम डॉक्टर प्रोफेसर राजकुमार, संस्थापक कुलपति ओपी जिंदल ग्लोबल यूनिवर्सिटी से विचार और समीक्षा प्राप्त करें। We will now present a critical review on the book by Professor Dr. C. Rajkumar, the founding Vice Chancellor of OP Jindal Global University.
Good evening to all of you. Honorable Union Minister for Education, Shri Dharmendra Pradhan ji, former chairperson of UGC and NAC, Dr. Virendra Chavan, the Secretary General of the Association of Indian Universities, Dr. Pankaj Mittal, distinguished Vice Chancellors, faculty members, students, educationists, and of course, media. It's indeed a proud privilege for me to share some critical reflections of an extraordinary book that Dr. Ashwin Fernandez has produced, titled India's Knowledge Supremacy, The New Dawn. This event is also very special, as he mentioned in his early remarks that he was deeply inspired by his meeting with the Honorable Education Minister, Mr. Pradhan, and I'm not surprised. Every meeting that many of us have with him is deeply inspiring for a number of reasons. And I say this with a lot of sense of responsibility that he is one of those persons who is so ready and willing to take suggestions and to also accept criticism and to work towards improving and transforming the education sector. And he's a natural consensus builder and something that we don't see often, especially in the political brass. So I'm so fortunate that we are all here in the midst of the minister. And as you know, he has an extremely busy schedule, and despite all of that, at very short notice, he accepted this invitation, and he's here with us for the launch of the book itself. Coming to the book itself, there are several things to say about it. I'll keep it as short as possible. First of all, I would say there are 4 things in the book that reflects some of the values that the author himself deeply espouses. First is that there is an intellectual rigor that the book reflects. It's not a wishy-washy book. It's a serious book, and it reflects a deep sense of engagement, both academic as well as institutional, and Dr. Ashwin Fernandez has reflected that in the book. Second, it also reflects a conscious sense of intellectual integrity. Sometimes when we end up thinking and talking about the past, it's so easy to get carried away. So Dr. Ashwin Fernandez has consciously made it a point to ensure that intellectual integrity is maintained while he reflects about the past and also talks about the present and the future. The third aspect is that it has a very, I would say, good mix of celebration as well as introspection, both of which I think is very critical as we look at the future. Celebrating several things that have happened in the past, not just the ancient past, but also even the recent past, but also a deeper sense of introspection as to what could have been the failings and what we should do to make it better and indeed the future. And another remarkable thing about the book is that it's just 125 pages, and he has covered a great journey of past, present, and the future in a very, relatively small number of pages. Now, I'm a lawyer, I'm a law professor. We are used to reading judgments which are 1,000 pages long, and to actually figure out what that judgment says can be an extremely difficult task. And even as authors, it is not uncommon to find extremely voluminous books. But what Ashwin has done in in a relatively smaller number of pages, he has captured an extraordinary history and journey and evolution of Indian heritage. So, to quickly reflect on this, I should add that sometimes in our discourse we fail to see the glory of our past, and sometimes we fail to see the hope beyond the destruction and the deterioration that has happened. This can lead to an ignorant mindset with a tendency to blame and to never learn from the past. Reading through Ashwin's book, one goes through a tideway of emotions in just a matter of 130 pages. It is no easy task to condense centuries-old, vibrant history of Indian higher education into a small, accessible, deeply grounded book. We witness the glory of ancient education system, its status, its evolution, its challenges with the British civil service, coaching center approach to education, our attempts at rebuilding after independence, battles with access, equity, and inclusiveness, and of course, keeping up with the knowledge economy. Now, what are the major takeaways? First, it talks about systematic and systemic colonization. We're all familiar with India's colonial past, but sometimes our textbooks, unfortunately, end up having a very rather misplaced sense of history. A few years ago, Dr. Shashi Tharoor wrote an amazing book which talked about the idea of, it had a title of an unglorious past, a critical reflection of the British Empire. That was, of course, more general, but what Ashwin has done is to focus on education. Just 50 pages. In the book, we witness the rise and fall of Indian higher education legacy, and in subsequent pages, we can trace the reverberations of the colonialization in holding back the diversity of India. In the fervor of Indian independence history, the higher educational history of India gets lost in between our struggle for freedom. Ashwin also has given a succinct background to the role of higher education, the student boycotts, and setting up of new universities that occurred in the midst of the freedom struggle. He also provides a very, very comprehensive overview of the institutions that were set up immediately after independence and how they continue to shape and play a significant role in the future of institutional building. The second major aspect which he has also talked about is women's education and status. In several indices that measure women's status, such as the Gender Inequality Index, India has consistently been ranked in the lower rungs. In Ashwin's book, we are seeing several glimpses of women's status in relation to access to education. It is astonishing to read that India was home to the first co-educational universities as early as 10th century BC in Takshashila, but deteriorated to perpetuate customs which may not be in the best interest of the status of women. In fact, women's education received an impetus in NEP 1986 and the several other social reforms such as abolition of child marriage and other things. This is the same which has popularized India to the extent that, and I quote, if you educate a man, you educate an individual, but if you educate a woman, you educate a family, unquote. It is pertinent to remember that India can never reach the heights of excellence if the potential of half of the population is not utilized. As Ambedkar so rightly put, and I quote, I measure the progress of a community by the degree of progress which women have achieved, unquote. The third big theme that the book has covered is its tryst with world-class institutions. From the Vedic period, we were attuned to creating knowledge and to the cost of world-class institutions being built as institutions of excellence. The independent India, that is during the time of Takshashila and Nalanda, and post-independent India in 1947, we have been consistently putting efforts to excel in our higher education sphere. IIT Kharagpur, set up in 1946, inspired a nation's imagination to build the future. As India was left with ruins, a shortcut to accelerate Indian institutions to the highest pedal was replicated, and we brought in the American technology research-oriented institutional model into India. However, this model was not in alignment with India's past, nor a complete solution to the problems of illiteracy, access, and equity. In a captivating sentence, Ashwin says, and I quote, the cloud of darkness did not let the light of knowledge into the huts of rural areas, unquote, where he speaks about access. It seems that with the NEP 2020, we have moved past this learning curve and is on the path to liberate it from the chains of our colonial past and embrace our true heritage. Building world-class institutions has to become a nationalist agenda if we want to reduce the brain drain and retain our human capital. The fourth theme that he has covered briefly is the philanthropic institution. The overview on philanthropic institutions in India and their importance in the higher education landscape of India was an important takeaway from the book. From Tata Institute of Social Sciences, established Tata Institute of Science in 1909, inspired by Vivekananda's views on science by Jamsetji Tata, India has seen the rise of several philanthropic higher education institutions, including an institution that I head myself. The NEP 2020 has strengthened the framework for funding to enable greater investment in HEIs. The fifth is, which is something towards the end of the book, he talks about the glimmer of hope. Behind every chapter of the turbulent history of India, there is a glimmer of hope. It is time we look at the other side of the coin and derive the good from what is perceived as a disadvantage. We have been condemned time and again for our ever-increasing population, but as institutions like World Bank observes, India's GDP can grow by 2% every year if India can effectively utilize human capital. By reconfiguring our higher education system, we are already on the path to become a knowledge economy, moving into a knowledge society. Other initiatives by the Honorable Prime Minister's government, as well as the Education Minister's effort, such as Make in India, Digital India, and other things have also been covered in the book. Towards the end, the book gives a very strong hope for the future of India. It talks about the policy-making agenda that the NEP has evolved and how these policies, I believe, will be shaping the future. I want to end by saying that the book all through reflects Dr. Ashwin Fernandez's own personal commitment and dedication to the development of an India that will engage with the world at large. As we know, we are a 1.4 billion people, but Ashwin is also conscious of the fact that in this large population, over 900 million people are less than 35 years of age. When most parts of the Western world, including China and Japan in East, will become older, India will be younger and will be younger for a longer time. At the dawn of Indian independence, our life expectancy was approximately 35, and today it is 71. Ashwin, in the conscious efforts to create this vision for new India, is mindful of the role of the youth in shaping the future of India and is conscious that young Indians will be shaping not only the future of India, but the future of the world. In that sense, the book is truly remarkable and futuristic. A last critical comment is that I wish he would have had more space to dwell upon some of the recent public policy initiatives, including the NEP's efforts to implement it, since it's been over 2 years since we have implemented NEP. But I'm sure those aspects of the evolving nature of NEP will be part of another volume that I hope he will write, which will once again reiterate the future of Indian higher education. With those words, I want to congratulate Dr. Ashwin Fernandez for producing such a passionate book with so much of hope, aspiration, while remembering the past and imagining the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Rajkumar, for those critical review. अब हम सब पुस्तक विमोचन के लिए श्री माननीय शिक्षा मंत्री जी और विशिष्ट अतिथियों गण को आमंत्रित करते हैं. We will now formally release the book by unveiling the book as well as we request the eminent guests to now formally release the book. Can we have a round of applause for the book, please? I thank again our distinguished guests and the Honorable Minister. अब मैं डॉक्टर पंकज मित्तल को अपने खास विचार प्रस्तुत करने के लिए आमंत्रित करती हूँ. We will now listen to specialist views from Professor Dr. Pankaj Mittal.
Thank you very much. Namaskar, pranam, a very good evening to all of you. माननीय शिक्षा मंत्री श्री धर्मेंद्र प्रधान जी, माननीय former chairman of NAC, Professor V.K. Chauhan ji, the celebrated author of the book, Ashwin Fernandez, Dr. Ashwin Fernandez, the Vice Chancellor of O.P. Jindal Global University, very dynamic Dr. Rajkumar. Ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening to all of you. सबसे पहले तो मैं बधाई देना चाहती हूँ डॉक्टर अश्विन फर्नांडिस को for the launch of this very, very important book on a very, very relevant theme. So many, many congratulations. And also thanks to Dr. Ashwin कि उन्होंने मौका दिया कि मुझे इस book का foreword लिखने के लिए. So thanks Ashwin for giving me an opportunity for writing the foreword of this book. And जैसा कि अभी डॉक्टर राजकुमार ने बताया कि this book पूरा जर्नी ट्रैवर्स किया जैसे फ्रॉम नालंदा टू NEP, नालंदा से लेके NEP तक इस बुक में सब कुछ है. नालंदा से शुरू होती है एंड इट टेल्स कि नालंदा 4th century BC में बनी थी और जब 7 AD में नालंदा में कितने करीब 2000 टीचर्स थे, 10,000 स्टूडेंट्स थे. और उस समय जो स्टूडेंट्स थे कहाँ से थे? चाइना से, इंडोनेशिया से, कोरिया से, जापान से, पर्शिया से, टर्की से. और वो क्या पढ़ने आते थे हमारे देश में? बुद्धिस्ट स्टडीज़, फाइन आर्ट्स, मेडिसिन, एस्ट्रोनॉमी, पॉलिटिक्स, एक्ट्स ऑफ वॉर. सो इस तरह का समृद्ध हमारा हायर एजुकेशन सिस्टम था उस समय पे. धीरे धीरे नालंदा को थोड़ा सा कहते हैं कि उसमें 9 मिलियन मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट्स थी उसके लाइब्रेरी में, पर एक फायर में 12th century AD में वो सब के सब जल गई. बहुत सारे इन्वेजन्स हुए. 16th century में ब्रिटिशर्स आए. धीरे धीरे ब्रिटिशर्स ने एक प्लान स्ट्रैटेजी के तहत हमारी पाठशालाएं ख़त्म की, हमारे गुरुकुल ख़त्म किए. रादर एक कंटेम्प्ट पैदा किया लोगों के बीच में कि इंडियन हायर एजुकेशन सिस्टम से ज़्यादा अच्छा है ब्रिटिश हायर एजुकेशन सिस्टम. टू द एक्सटेंट कि जब हमारा देश आज़ाद हुआ 1947 में, तो उस समय हमारा जो लिटरेसी रेट था वो था 12%. आज 78% है, पर उस टाइम 12% लिटरेसी रेट था, जो कि ऐसा देश था जो कि बहुत समृद्ध माना जाता था, जहाँ सभी लोग बहुत ज्ञानी माने जाते थे. सो दिस वाज द इफेक्ट. और उसके बाद बहुत सारा कुछ हुआ कि 1947 के बहुत सारे कमीशन आए, राधा कृष्णन कमीशन आए, कोठारी कमीशन आया, बहुत सारी रिपोर्ट, नेशनल एजुकेशन पॉलिसी आई, 1968 की आई, 1986 की आई. पर जो ये 2020 की नेशनल पॉलिसी NB 2020, दिस वाज ए पॉलिसी जिसको कहते हैं कि इट ब्रॉट ए ब्रेथ ऑफ फ्रेश एयर इन द हायर एजुकेशन इकोसिस्टम. बहुत सारी इसकी जो रिकमेंडेशंस थी, एवरीबडी नोज अबाउट द रिकमेंडेशंस की. मल्टीडिसिप्लिनैरिटी की बात की कि 64 कला संपूर्ण एजुकेशन, जो हमारे शुरू में हमारे इतिहास में बताया जाता था कि हमारी शिक्षा 64 कला संपूर्ण थी. वो 64 कला ये नहीं था कि सिर्फ एक डांस, म्यूज़िक. उस 64 कलाओं में म्यूज़िक भी था, डांस भी था, और मेडिसिन भी था, और इंजीनियरिंग भी था, आर्किटेक्चर भी था. सभी तरह की कलाएँ थी. इस तरह का एजुकेशन सिस्टम था. हमारे NEP के बहुत सारी रिकमेंडेशंस हैं जो कि बाहर के बहुत सारी हमारी मीटिंग्स होती हैं फॉरेनर्स के साथ भी, इंटरनेशनल ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस के साथ भी. सो दे आर लुकिंग फॉरवर्ड टू NEP कि हमारा ABC क्या है, एकेडमिक बैंक ऑफ क्रेडिट क्या है, हाउ यू आर गोइंग टू प्रमोट इंटरनेशनलाइजेशन ऑफ एजुकेशन, हाउ यू आर डूइंग दिस क्रेडिट फ्रेमवर्क. सो बहुत सारा लोगों के बीच में उत्साह है. और किस तरह से NEP में कहा गया कि कैसे इंटीग्रेट करना है हायर एजुकेशन सिस्टम में इंडियन नॉलेज सिस्टम को. 2 दिन पहले ही हमारी कॉन्फ्रेंस हो रही थी जिसमें इंडियन नॉलेज सिस्टम्स की बात हो रही थी. तो ये बहुत अच्छी तरह से निकल के आया कि इंडियन नॉलेज सिस्टम्स अगर हमें अपनी यूनिवर्सिटी सिस्टम से मिलाना है तो उसको एक अलग से पेपर या अलग से कोर्स करके नहीं आएगा. उसको सभी पेपर्स में हर एक में इंटीग्रेट करना पड़ेगा, केस स्टडीज़ की तरह, एग्जाम्पल्स की तरह, जिससे कि इंडियन नॉलेज सिस्टम हमारे जो पूरा एजुकेशन सिस्टम है उसमें एक आत्मसात हो सके, उसमें एक तरह से समझ में आए लोगों को कि हाँ, अवर स्टूडेंट शुड बी प्राउड ऑफ इट, जिसको हम कहते हैं कि ग्रैंड इंडियन नैरेटिव. एक ग्रैंड इंडियन नैरेटिव क्रिएट करना पड़ेगा दैट हमारे बच्चों को ये they should be proud of India because of its rich Indian cultural heritage, not because of Bollywood or not because of cricket. So they should be proud of Indians' rich cultural heritage. और इसके साथ ही साथ हम ये भी जानते हैं कि आफ्टर द NEP और जो इतने सारे रिफॉर्म्स हुए, इंडिया इज़ प्रोग्रेसिंग हार्ड. वी हैव द वर्ल्ड्स बेस्ट higher education systems in the country. We have the world best minds are produced which are working as global CEOs in many, many countries, like whether you talk of Sundar Pichai or Satya Nadella or Leena, and so many of them are there. पर एक चीज़ जिसके बारे में मैं आज बात करना चाहती हूँ, जो कि एक नई अपॉर्चुनिटी हमारे पास आई है, दैट इज़ G20 प्रेसिडेंसी ऑफ इंडिया. और जब ये G20 प्रेसिडेंसी आई है वो ऐसे ऑपरच्यून मोमेंट पे आई है कि G20 नेशंस आर द नेशंस जहाँ पे मैक्सिमम नंबर ऑफ़ यूनिवर्सिटीज़ हैं एंड मैक्सिमम नंबर ऑफ़ प्रेस्टिजियस यूनिवर्सिटीज़ हैं. अगर हम ग्लोबल रैंकिंग से जाएं तो मैक्सिमम हाईएस्ट रैंकिंग यूनिवर्सिटीज़ इन G20 कंट्रीज़ में ही हैं. So now that we have the presidency of G20 nations, what we feel is, and we have sent a proposal, and I'm very happy to share with you that the ministry has also agreed to that proposal, that we should be having an event in which we call these G20 universities to our country. One, to learn from each other. It will be a collaborative effort because they are all good universities, but also to showcase Indian higher education system to them. Because many times what happens is that they feel that Indian higher education system is not that good, they don't have many good higher education institutions. So we want to showcase the Indian higher education system to them, and when these G20 nations sit together और आपस में बातचीत करके जो नया निकलेगा कि कैसे एक ह्यूमन सेंट्रिक ग्लोबल एजुकेशन होना चाहिए, उसके ऊपर जब बात करेंगे तो मुझे लगता है काफ़ी अच्छा होगा. तो हम उस पर काम कर रहे हैं, हम कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि G20 नेशंस में जो यूनिवर्सिटीज़ हैं उनको लिखें कि आप आइए. वी आर प्रपोजिंग ए इवेंट इन पुणे and then eventually in Delhi, and in between those two big events we are proposing कि वो G20 nations के जो vice chancellors हैं, universities के जो vice chancellors हैं, they should be visiting the best universities of the country. तो मुझे लगता है कि ऐसा होगा तो जो हम knowledge supremacy की बात करते हैं, तो that knowledge supremacy will go a long way. World will know about India, and they will know that what is happening in India, and they will appreciate, and they will send it by word of mouth. इसी में एक जो दूसरा proposal हमने दिया था, that was we know that India is going to lead the world in future. India is going to be the Vishwa Guru in future. So one proposal which we gave, I don't know whether it will be agreed or not, when we talk of Fulbright, the Fulbright is a fellowship scheme which started in 1946, and right now there are around 3.25 lakh Fulbright ambassadors. तो वो जो अमेरिकन हायर एजुकेशन सिस्टम के वो एम्बेसडर्स की तरह काम करते हैं. इसी तरह एरास्मस मुंडस था 1987 में शुरू हुआ, तो आज की डेट पे 80,000 एरास्मस मुंडस के फेलोज हैं. दे आर ऑल ओवर द वर्ल्ड, एंड दे आर यूरोप को पूरा उनके ब्रांड एम्बेसडर्स की तरह काम करते हैं. इसी तरह से हमें इंडिया के ब्रांड एम्बेसडर्स फॉरेन कंट्रीज़ में क्रिएट करने पड़ेंगे. अगर हम अपनी नॉलेज सुपरमेसी को दिखाना चाहते हैं तो हमें दुनिया आके हमारे बारे में बोले तो वो ज़्यादा अच्छा रहेगा. तो मेरी ये भी रिक्वेस्ट रहेगी, if we can institute a fellowship of this type, like Fulbright or Erasmus, maybe 5,000 fellowships every year. So by the time we finish this Amrit Kal of 25 years, by the time the India turns 100, we'll be having 1,25,000 scholars who will be promoting India's higher education, who will be the brand ambassadors of India world over. So I think, I mean, we are proposing this. Let us see if it is agreed or not. So finally, I will again congratulate Ashwin कि आपने इतना अच्छी किताब लिखी है, and it is a very good book, and it talks about India as education as a soft power for making knowledge diplomacy. Thank you very much. Thanks, Ashwin. Thank you.
थैंक यू वेरी मच डॉक्टर मित्तल. अब हम डॉक्टर वीरेंद्र सिंह चौहान के खास विचारों को प्रस्तुत करने के लिए आमंत्रित करते हैं.
माननीय मंत्री श्री प्रधान साहब, राज, पंकज, अश्विन, मैं अश्विन को कुछ 10 साल से जानता हूँ. मुझे यही जानता हूँ अश्विन बात बहुत अच्छी करता है, मगर मुझे नहीं मालूम था अश्विन लिख भी अच्छा सकता है. एंड आई हैव अ सस्पिशन अश्विन विल बी स्टैंडिंग इन दिस रूम मेनी टाइम्स आफ्टर दिस. अश्विन ने जो किया ये बहुत पहले होना चाहिए था, मगर इसने बहुत संत, जैसे राज ने कहा कि बहुत कंसाइज वे में येट वेरी कोहेरेंट वे इज प्रेजेंटेड. मैं इसको जहाँ किताब ख़त्म हो रही है वहाँ से आगे की बात करना चाहता हूँ. वी हैव एवरी रीज़न टू बी प्राउड ऑफ एंड बास्क इन द ग्लोरी of our ancient tradition, the way we educated, the way we taught the whole world. But I think it probably will be a little bit misplaced if we didn't see who are and what we are competing, who we are competing with, how education is given, how knowledge is created, of course how knowledge is accessed. All that has changed. And I think Ashwin, in the next book, that is something I think we should capture, that things are very, very different. While we stay rooted into what we've done well in the past, we should, and you've looked at that. In fact, you looked at how things are deteriorated. I wouldn't entirely blame this or that person, but I think from 20 university to 1,200 university, from 200 colleges to 50,000 colleges, It's a thermodynamically unstable system. It's an amazing expansion, and India should be proud of it. And I think all of us are proud of it. We're having 3.8 crore people in higher education. I think even China, I mean, people say China is number one. I think in sheer number, India is number one right now of the number of people we teach. But I'll just focus a minute in quality. And the NEP, which to my mind is yet to kickstart, it has to kickstart and it has to capture a couple of things. And I'll give you some very brief quantitative numbers. And there is a narrative which is, I hear in many meetings that to start NEP, which is to my mind one of the finest things that has come out, that NEP can be started just as we are. I mean, today we said NEP and tomorrow we can start NEP. I think we need to reconsider that. NEP is an ambitious plan, and therefore it requires very ambitious, very careful planning, sitting down across the table, listening to the voices which are not similar to the voices which might create a narrative. It's very easy to implement NEP. It isn't easy to implement NEP. I don't think we should gloss over that, but it should be implemented. And once it's implemented, I think we will be looking at one of the finest education system in the world. What do we need? Let me just give you a figure, and I'll be very brief. I'll just take 2 more minutes. NEP, or before that, Kothari Commission, or before that any commission, has always maintained, and the President of India, when he introduced NEP to all of us in the COVID time, said, and you can see that tape again, that all this will not function if India did not spend 6% of GDP. You might think I'm arguing, put 6% of GDP, then only NEP will start. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm just pointing out that if we were to compete, and to my mind, if China thinks it's competition only with America, I feel our competition 30 years from now, 40 years from now, is only with China. I think we have to look China straight into his eyes, whether it's internationalization of education or whether it is opening medical school, attracting students. I say that's where our competition lies. It doesn't lie in the left or south or Argentina or Brazil or South Africa. China spent 2.7% of its GDP on R&D. It has 17 trillion economy right now. We spend 0.7% of GDP, and our economy is about 3.3 trillion. Now, research, knowledge creation is expensive. Good quality knowledge creation comes at a cost. And I think we should review that notion that a whole lot of things can be done just by going left and right. It doesn't happen like that. I'm looking at something which Government of India recently started, hugely ambitious, extremely beneficial, very good. The One Nation, One Subscription. That will be dream come true of the part of NEP. And those kind of initiatives have to be very significant. Imagine every college, every university, every institution in India having access to the much needed whatever references they want to look at a click of a mouse. That will be power of NEP. But it will cost. It won't come without any cost. So my only plea with Ashwin, myself and others, is really also to get real about where the competition, what do we expect a university today, university of yesterday, or university of day before yesterday were very different. Today universities are supposed to produce skilled people, they have to look after what the industry is needing, they have to worry about whether our rankings are in place or not, how much research should we do, how much teaching we should do. It's not easy to be a university anymore. And all that tension needs to be captured. My final comment would be, the research in India is still based, when I say research, is really knowledge creation. And most part of ranking is science research, unfortunately. Is the money that you need to spend on creating a world-class structure. And in case of India, we are still very much embedded in the Russian model, not British model, Russian model, that we have institutes in ICMR, we have institute in DST, DBT, etc. Fairly good facilities, lot of good research paper comes. India is number 3 in producing research publications. We publish about 2 lakhs publication per year. China publishes 7 lakhs. US publishes 6 lakhs. So our eyes have to be clearly focused. The very last, absolutely last comment is the collaboration between university. Foreign university can come when they want to come. We can collaborate with them when we want to do. What about collaboration within the country? We have excellent private universities. We have very good government institutions. Just search for yourself. And Ashwin, you should look at it. It's not in your book anywhere. Why we are shy of collaborating? If I work in Oxford, I'm doing structural biology, I just have to pick up a phone and make a call that I don't have this, can you give it? How much collaboration, for example, JNU would do with Delhi University, or Delhi University would do with Jamia, or Jamia would do with Aligarh? I think we should probe this. We probably are missing what we can do so much better. NEP envisions this. So I would just finish what I want to say is by that we need to figure out the more money is necessary condition, it is not sufficient condition. Just because if I can, otherwise Saudi Arabia would have the best universities in the world. So we need to find leaders who will be able to wade their way through when the money is being available, but money would be needed. प्रधान साहब को मैं पहली बार मिला हूँ इन पर्सन. मैं इसलिए बिल्कुल ये कहना चाहता था कि ये मौका बिल्कुल हमको गंवाना नहीं चाहिए. मैं यहाँ से खड़ा होकर कहूँ कि हमें कोलैबोरेशन करना चाहिए तो कोलैबोरेशन नहीं हो जाएगी. मैं ये सुनता हूँ कि हमें अपना एटीट्यूड चेंज करना पड़ेगा, पर मेरे कहे से एटीट्यूड बदल नहीं जाएगा. इसके लिए हमको एक्शन प्लान चाहिए. We can't force collaboration. But we must have collaboration. That's why Chinese universities are doing, Peking universities, Chinese are 8 universities in top 100. So I'll just leave it at that. And but thank you very much, Ashwin, for asking me here. But you have many more books to write. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Chauhan, for your incisive views. अब मैं मुख्य भाषण के लिए आदरणीय शिक्षा मंत्री महोदय श्री धर्मेंद्र प्रधान जी को आमंत्रित करती हूँ. मंत्री महोदय का सहयोग हमारे लिए विशेष प्रोत्साहन का कारण है और हम श्री प्रधान जी का आज हमारे साथ जुड़ने के लिए अभिनंदन करते हैं. The keynote address by the Honorable Minister of Education, ladies and gentlemen.
नमस्कार. यूजीसी के पूर्व चेयरमैन आदरणीय प्रोफेसर वीरेंद्र सिंह चौहान जी, एआईयू के सेक्रेटरी जनरल प्रोफेसर पंकज मित्तल जी, ओपी जिंदल ग्लोबल यूनिवर्सिटी के फाउंडिंग वाइस चांसलर प्रोफेसर सी राजकुमार जी, और आज की इस कार्यक्रम की मुख्य केंद्र बिंदु सूत्रधर मेरे मित्र डॉक्टर अश्विन फर्नांडिस जी, जिन्होंने 39 साल में पहला किताब लिखा है. मैंने धीरे से उनको पूछा, थोड़ा किताब को मैंने देखा और पूछा कि अश्विन जी आपकी उम्र क्या हुआ. न 39. और उनको आज चौहान साहब ने आशीर्वाद दिया. और एक अच्छे टीचर ये कभी नहीं कहता कि तुमने अच्छा नहीं किया, ये कहा जाता है कि और अच्छा करो, और अच्छा कर सकते हो. इसीलिए मैं अश्विनी जी को एक मित्र के नाते, भाई के नाते, प्रोफेसर चौहान की उस अपेक्षा को हम सभी की ओर से दोहराता हूँ. आपका ये पहला किताब नहीं होनी चाहिए, ये किताब शुरुआती है और आपने हिम्मत दिखाई एक ऐसे विषय से अपना विचार को भविष्य के लिए और वर्तमान तथा भविष्य के लिए पीढ़ी परिवर्तन की कामों में प्रेरित करने के लिए भारत की ज्ञान परंपरा की महत्व, सुप्रीमासी एक मेरे दृष्टि से थोड़ा अधिक बात हो जाता है। भारत की ज्ञान परंपरा कभी किसी की ऊपर सुप्रीमासी दिखाने के लिए तो कभी नहीं था। भारत की ज्ञान परंपरा दुनिया को संभालने के लिए दायित्व लिया है। इसीलिए हमने इस बार भी G20 की थीम बनाए है वसुधैव कुटुंबकम। जो समाज पूरा विश्व को, पूरा मानव को एक परिवार मानता है, वो किसी के ऊपर सुप्रीमेसी नहीं दिखा सकता है। इसीलिए मैं एक किताब की रीडर के नाते अश्विनी जी, आपको ये मेरा ओपिनियन है, मेरा निजी ओपिनियन है। नथिंग टू शो, डोंट हैव टू शो एनीबॉडी सुप्रीमेसी। हम भारत की लोग जब आदि अनंत काल से अब तक उत्तर और समाधानी समाज की लोग हैं, और हमारी ज्ञान के आधार पे हमने इसको किया है। इंडिया डीप इनटू इंडिया इज ए नॉलेज सोसाइटी। दुनिया को अगर आज के समय में 21वीं सदी में हम लोग थोड़ा बहुत समझने का कोशिश करते हैं, परखते हैं, तो सभी समय में सभी ने कहा नॉलेज इज द लाइट, एजुकेशन इज द अप्लाइड पार्ट ऑफ नॉलेज। ये सभी के आधार पे समाज की गति निरंतर रही है। और आपने, मैं आपको धन्यवाद देता हूँ, शुभेच्छा देता हूँ, आपने इंडियन नॉलेज पावर हाउस के बारे में, नॉलेज इकोसिस्टम के बारे में आपने एक हिम्मत की है, एक विचार लिखने के लिए मैं आपको बधाई देता हूँ। थोड़ा बहुत जितना किताब को मैं समझने का कोशिश किया, ये राजकुमार जी ने उसको इंटरप्रेट किया, एक प्रकार से थोड़ा बहुत बुक रीडिंग भी किया। अश्विनी जी, राजकुमार जी अच्छे मित्र हैं, तो उन्होंने उनको पहले दी दिया किताब, तो उन्होंने उसको पढ़ा और उसको हम सभी को थोड़ा मौका दिया समझने का। लेकिन मैंने जितना पढ़ा अश्विनी जी, उसमें और बहुत चीज़ रह गया है, और बहुत चीज़ रह गया। लेकिन आपको बधाई तो दे ही रहा हूँ इस अच्छे अटेम्प्ट के लिए। लेकिन मैं अगर 2-3 विषय को कहूँ कि भारत की ज्ञान परंपरा की कोई प्रमाण मिलती है तो वेद से मिलती है, उपनिषद से मिलती है, जिसकी आयु तिलक जी ने कहा कि लगभग 8000 साल पुरानी। ऐसे भी विचार रखे जो कहते हैं और पुरानी है। और जिस वेद में, उपनिषद में ज्ञान की सभी आयामों के ऊपर, पंकज जी ने अपने विषय कहते हुए इस विषय को उल्लेख किया, इंडियन नॉलेज सिस्टम ये कोई हिस्ट्री, जियोग्राफी, फिजिक्स या एआई जैसे एक टॉपिक नहीं है। ब्रह्मांड की सारा आयामों के बारे में इस देश में रहने वाले लोगों की जो नॉलेज लेवल था, वो ये इंडियन नॉलेज सिस्टम। इसलिए उसमें विज्ञान था, समाज विज्ञान था, चिकित्सा शास्त्र था, साहित्य था, ग्रामर था, मैथमेटिक्स था, एस्ट्रोनॉमी था, फिजिक्स था, जियोफिजिक्स था। सारा विद्याओं की समूह को भारतीय ज्ञान परंपरा की अंतर्गत कहा जाएगा। और ये प्रमाण, अगर मैं एक उदाहरण दूं, अभी विश्व की शासन प्रणाली जो एक सामाजिक विषय है, सामाजिक अर्थनैतिक, उसको आज आधुनिक यूनिवर्सिटी की भाषा में पब्लिक पॉलिसी, गवर्नेंस, स्ट्रैटेजी के साथ कंपेयर किया जा सकता है। शासन प्रणाली कैसे होनी चाहिए? एक छत्रवाद होनी चाहिए, एक कलेक्टिव मिलिट्रीइज्म होनी चाहिए, हो सकता है, या एक कम्युनिज्म, एक कम्युन मॉडल भी हो सकता है, कुछ लोग चलाएं, सभी के लिए कुछ लोग चलाएं, या एक चर्चा विमर्श के उपरांत एक चयन प्रक्रिया के माध्यम से समाज की चिंता करने के लिए एक प्रक्रिया अपनाए, जिसकी नाम गणतंत्र है, प्रजातंत्र है। और सभी ने माना है कि शासन प्रणाली में डेमोक्रेसी इज द बेस्ट वे। इसको मॉडर्न, सिविलाइज, साइंटिफिक अनेक उपमा इसे दिया गया है। और उस डेमोक्रेसी का उत्पत्ति कहाँ हुई। अगर वेद उपनिषद को हम पढ़ते हैं तब उसमें सभा की कल्पना है, विमर्श की बारे में चर्चा है। ये सभा विमर्श एक यूनिटरी रिजिम पे नहीं रहती है, एक डिक्टेटोरियल मॉडल में नहीं रहती है। चार लोग जहां बैठ के चर्चा करते हैं वहां सभा होती है और विमर्श होती है। यानी भारत गणतंत्र की जननी है, जिसके आगे 4th सेंचुरी तक तमिलनाडु में तंजावुर जिले में एक शिलालेख में एक पंचायत की कल्पना कैसे होगा, चुनाव कैसे होगा, उसकी परिचालना कैसे होगी, अगर वहां एक गड़बड़ी हुई तो उसको निकालने की व्यवस्था क्या रहेगी, ये सारे के बारे में वर्णन किया गया है। अभी अभी कुछ दिन पहले अमेरिका में चुनाव की नतीजा आया। कुछ लोगों को चुनाव हारना हजम नहीं हुआ तो कैपिटल में घुस गए। अभी अभी ब्राजील में वही घटना हुई। लेकिन भारत में ये तो होते रहता है, चुनाव हारना जीतना जाना उसको माना जाता है। ये आज की विषय नहीं है, ये सदियों से चली है, क्योंकि भारत स्वभाव से प्रजातांत्रिक है। महिला शिक्षा के बारे में इस किताब में लिखा गया है, विश्वविद्यालय के बारे में उल्लेख किया गया है, गुरुकुल के बारे में उल्लेख किया गया है। मैं मानता हूं कि आज जब हम G20 की प्रेसिडेंसी भारत को मिला है, विश्व ने, भारत ने क्या काम किया देखिए। प्रधानमंत्री जी की विचार को देखिए। G20 में 20 देश हैं और 9 देशों को हमने इस बार स्पेशल इनवाइटी करके बुलाई है। 29वां 5-7 इंटरनेशनल एजेंसियां उसमें जुड़ेंगे, यानी 35-40 तक गवर्नमेंट और एजेंसी दोनों मिलकर इकट्ठा आएंगे। विश्व के बड़े लोग आएंगे, पावरफुल लोग आएंगे, ग्लोबल ऑर्डर इसी में से निकलेगा। 15 वर्टिकल पे चर्चा होगी, अर्थनीति से लेके श्रम शक्ति तक, शिक्षा से लेके पर्यावरण तक सभी में चर्चा होगी। विश्व की वाणिज्य के बारे में चर्चा होगी। हम वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर की इस साल की दायित्व भारत लेगा, नेतृत्व करेगा। भारत क्या किया, प्रधानमंत्री जी ने विश्व की ग्लोबल साउथ को बुलाया। वॉइस ऑफ ग्लोबल साउथ ऐसे एक प्लेटफॉर्म पे आप लोगों ने अखबारों में देखा होगा, प्रधानमंत्री जी ने विश्व की इमर्जिंग इकोनॉमी, डेवलपिंग इकोनॉमी की लीडरशिप को बुलाया और कहा कि भाई विश्व में हमारे वहां इस बार G20 हो रहा है, इसमें आपकी सुझाव क्या है। वसुधैव कुटुंबकम 29 देशों में नहीं बन सकती है, या धनी देशों के अंदर चर्चा को सीमित रखने से नहीं होती है। विश्व के सभी मानव के बारे में चर्चा करना है तो हम सभी को पूछना पड़ेगा, सभी की आकांक्षा अपेक्षा को प्रतिफलन करना ही पड़ेगा। उतने में हम अटके नहीं। 6-7 विभागों की मंत्रियों को काम दिया गया कि आप छोटे छोटे ग्रुप में उन देशों के लोगों से शिक्षा में क्या होगा, स्वास्थ्य में क्या होगा, अर्थनीति कैसे होनी चाहिए, विदेश नीति कैसे होनी चाहिए, स्ट्रैटेजी कैसे बने, सबकी सुझाव लो। ये भारत की ज्ञान परंपरा के कारण ही जब हमें मौका मिला, हम अपने अपने में चीजों को सीमित नहीं किया। विश्व की चिंता क्या कोई जरूरी नहीं था। उरुग्वे की नेतृत्व को पूछना कोई जरूरी नहीं था कि आपके वहां क्या होना चाहिए बताओ, हम अभी G20 में चर्चा करें। उनकी भी अपेक्षा नहीं था, या G20 की प्रोटोकॉल में नहीं था। ये भारत की ज्ञान परंपरा की एक उदाहरण मैंने आपको बताया। ऐसे एक विषय बहुत गहरा है। आज के अवसर पे जितने लोग यहाँ बैठे हैं, मैं सभी को आह्वान करता हूँ इस पे चर्चा हो, इस पे और किताबें आए, उसमें निबंध आए, एसेज आए, डिबेट हो, ओपेड आए, पक्ष विपक्ष सभी की विषय में चर्चा हो। मैं इसकी हिस्टोरिकल एस्पेक्ट पे नहीं जाता हूँ, समय की अपना एक मर्यादा है। एक विषय मैं कहूँगा, आगे 21वीं सदी में इस ज्ञान परंपरा को हम हमारी आवश्यकता और विश्व की आवश्यकता, ये दोनों को सॉल्यूशन देने के लिए कैसे काम पे लाएं। भारत की कुछ इनहेरेंट कैपेसिटी है जिसको नियति ने आगे बढ़ा रहा है। समय की चक्र में कभी हम लंबे समय तक पराधीन रहे, हजारों साल पराधीन रहे और आखिर के 300 साल लगभग ब्रिटेन के गुलामी के अंदर रहे, जिसकी आज़ादी का 75 साल हम अभी मना रहे हैं। उस समय में हमने 2014 में हमारी इकोनॉमिक स्टैंडिंग 10th था, 10th ग्लोबल इकोनॉमी हम थे। आज हम 5th हुए और यूके को सरपास करके हुए हैं। ये तो नियति है। ऐसे तो कोई कह नहीं सकता कि जब हम 75th ईयर ऑफ इंडिपेंडेंस बना रहे होंगे उसी समय में हम कोई प्लान करके यूके को ही, हम कभी 7 से 8th हुए होंगे, किसी को टपे होंगे, कोई चर्चा नहीं हुई थी। कभी हमने 7 से 6th हुए होंगे, हमें तो याद नहीं हम किसको सरपास किए। लेकिन आज हमको एक मौका दिया है, हम जब 6 से 5th हुए यूके को ही सरपास किए। यह कोइंसिडेंट है। आज विश्व भर में आपकी परिवारों में जो लोग विदेश में रहते होंगे, आप उनको आज पूछिए आपके वहां डाटा की प्राइस क्या है और भारत की डाटा की प्राइस क्या है। भारत तेजी से दुनिया की डिजिटल हॉटस्पॉट बन रहा है। कोरोना के समय में हमने जितना सरकार की सुविधा दिए, लगभग डिजिटल गेटवे में दिया। लगभग कोविन ऐप लगाए, टीका लगाए तो कोविन ऐप में हमारी सर्टिफिकेट आ गया। आज भारत की दुनिया की 100% की डिजिटल ट्रांजैक्शन की 40 भारत में ही होती है। भारत की डिजिटल अडेप्टेबिलिटी, टेक्नोलॉजी अडेप्टेबिलिटी दुनिया के लिए आकर्षण की केंद्र बना हुआ है। दुनिया की कोई टेक्नोलॉजी कंपनी नहीं है जो भारत में आना नहीं चाहता है। आइदर इस मार्केट में आना चाहता है, नहीं तो इस मार्केट की, इस सोसाइटी की इंटेलेक्चुअल कैपेसिटी को ग्लोबल बिजनेस में अडॉप्ट करना चाहता है। यह भारत की इमर्जिंग रियलिटी है। भारतीय ज्ञान परंपरा आधारित इमर्जिंग एरिया में हम कैसे अपना पोजीशन बनाएंगे। अश्विनी जी के बारे में कई एक्सपेक्टेशन रखा गया। मेरे एक्सपेक्टेशन रहेगा इंडियन नॉलेज सिस्टम, नॉट सुप्रीमेसी अश्विनी जी, ये कैसे 21st सेंचुरी में ग्लोबल हेरिमोनी के लिए काम पे आएगा, एक्सप्लॉयटेशन के लिए नहीं, धनी होने के लिए नहीं। हम विश्व में कैसे भाईचारा बढ़ाए, सद्भावना बढ़ाए, उसमें हमारी नॉलेज सिस्टम कैसे काम किया है और आज कैसे उसको कॉन्टेक्चुअलाइज किया जाएगा, उसके बारे में आप लिखोगे। मेरा ये शुभेच्छा है। आखिर में एक अच्छी विषय को चौहान साहब ने उठाया। मैं रोज एक विद्यार्थी की भूमिका में रहने वाला व्यक्ति हूं। मित्रों, मैं स्टूडेंट मूवमेंट से आया हूं। लंबे समय देश की सामाजिक जीवन में मेरे को रहने का अवसर भी मिला है। स्टूडेंट एक्टिविज्म करते करते हमको आज 40 साल की सामाजिक जीवन के अनुभव में मैं इस मानसिकता में रहता हूं, जहां भी जाऊं हमारी कोई आलोचक हो तो भी उनसे 2 चीज सीख के आओ। आज तो मेरे को यूजीसी के पुराने चेयरमैन मिले। मैं उनके साथ डिस्प्यूट नहीं करता हूं कि भारत की वे फॉरवर्ड क्या है। उन्होंने कहा, अश्विनी आपको बधाई, किताब तो लिखा, लेकिन आगे क्या होगा। मैं उस मत का आदमी हूं, आगे क्या करेंगे बताइए। और एजुकेशन ही गेम चेंजर है, एजुकेशन ही ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन लेके आएगा, इसमें किसी की सेकंड ओपिनियन नहीं है। और सबने सराहना किया कि अभी की एनईपी इज ए ट्रांसफॉर्मेटिव स्ट्रैटेजिक वेपन, इसमें किसी की दो मत नहीं है। लेकिन इसको इम्प्लीमेंट करने में 2 एस्पेक्ट है। एक, क्या सिर्फ ये देखो सरकारों की स्पेंडिंग की अपने आप में एक लिमिटेशन है। देखिए, भारत की अर्थनीति ऐसे ही स्मूथ नहीं है। अब दुनिया की डेवलप्ड इकोनॉमी की अर्थनीति और भारत की अर्थनीति, मैं फिर जिम्मेदारी के साथ कह रहा हूं, इमर्जिंग इकोनॉमी के साथ भारत को तुलना मत करिए। भारत एक इमर्जिंग इकोनॉमी है, हम डेवलप्ड इकोनॉमी नहीं हुए हैं। हम विकसित भारत बनने की 25 साल की रोड मैप में चलना शुरू कर दिया अमृतकाल में। आज लेकिन हम विश्व की इस विषम परिस्थिति में भी हमारे जो इकोनॉमिक फंडामेंटल्स है, प्रजातंत्र में राजनीतिक प्रतिपक्ष कुछ विषय पे टिप्पणी करे, उसको मैं सहजता से लेता हूं, लेकिन मैं जिम्मेवारी के साथ कहता हूं, दुनिया में कोई गवर्नेंस मॉडल नहीं है जहां इतने चुनौती के बाद इसको इतना स्मूथली ट्रांजिट कराए। इसकी कॉस्ट है। पिछले दिनों में इंडियन गवर्नमेंट की बजट से लगभग 7 लाख करोड़ रुपए की कैपेक्स खर्चा करके इकोनॉमी, सर्कुलर इकोनॉमी को चलाने के लिए कभी चुनौती नहीं था। आज मौका, हमको जरूरत करना पड़ा, हमें जरूरत थी। दुनिया के लोग अपने बचत को, अपने सेविंग्स को, अपने इन्वेस्टमेंट कैपेसिटी को क्लोज हैंड करके, क्रॉस फिंगर करके बैठ गए। क्या होगा आगे? मेरे पैसा तो खराब नहीं हो जाएगा, लेकिन उस समय में एक सेंसिटिव जिम्मेवार सरकार की दायित्व क्या होती है? लोगों को भूखा नहीं रख सकते, काम करना पड़ेगा, प्रोजेक्ट बनानी पड़ेगी। आज हमने किया, इसको आगे भी करते रहेंगे, एजुकेशन की स्पेंडिंग को भी बढ़ाते रहेंगे। पिछले बार मैं काम की जिम्मेवारी लेने के बाद मैं प्रधानमंत्री जी को धन्यवाद दूंगा, पहली बार 1 लाख करोड़ रुपया की बजट आउटले एजुकेशन में गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया रखा, अलग राज्य सरकारों ने। ये आज 6 जीडीपी की 6% स्पेंडिंग की टारगेट बेंचमार्क से आज हम लगभग 4+ में पहुंच चुके हैं। 4.3 समथिंग हम आज आए हैं। ये सफर पूरा करना पड़ेगा, इसकी जिम्मेवारी भी मैं लेता हूं। लेकिन सिर्फ स्पेंडिंग इज ए मेजर इशू, रिसर्च इज ए मेजर इशू। हम लंबे समय तक कंज्यूमिंग इकोनॉमी नहीं हो सकते हैं, उसमें रोजगार नहीं होगा, उसमें बिग इकोनॉमिक अपॉर्चुनिटी नहीं आएगी जब तक हमारी इनोवेशन, हमारी रिसर्च, हमारी इनोवेशन, हमारी एंटरप्रेन्योर्स ग्लोबल मार्केट में प्रोडक्ट बेचने के लिए नहीं जाएंगे, तब तक हम बड़ा इकोनॉमी नहीं बन पाएंगे। इसको मैं जानते हुए इस चुनौती भरा सिचुएशन में एनईपी में बड़ा आशावादी हूं। इसको सफल करना पड़ेगा, सोसाइटी की भागीदारी से करनी पड़ेगी, न्यू मॉडल से करनी पड़ेगी। निराशा की कोई कारण नहीं है। हमारी संसाधन की सीमा रहने के बावजूद आज 5G टेक्नोलॉजी, इंडिजिनस टेक्नोलॉजी हमारी IITs ने लाया है, C.DOT ने लाया है। BSNL को हमने 1,60,000 करोड़ रुपया खर्चा करके रिवैम्प करके उन्हीं के माध्यम से भारत में एक नया स्वदेशी 5G टेक्नोलॉजी को इंप्लीमेंट करेंगे और इसी मॉडल को हम देश, विश्व की इमर्जिंग एरिया में अफोर्डेबिलिटी के साथ ले जाएंगे, तब हम प्रोड्यूसिंग इकोनॉमी हो पाएंगे। हमारी एग्री प्रोड्यूस, हमारी फूड प्रोसेसिंग की वैल्यू एडिशन, इसमें बिना रिसर्च किए, बिना नॉलेज लेवल बढ़ाते हुए हम ग्लोबल मार्केट को छू नहीं पाएंगे। हम जानते हैं, काम करना पड़ेगा उसमें से, भारत की उद्योग को उसमें से जुड़ना पड़ेगा। विश्व भर में इंडस्ट्री, पॉलिसी और एकेडेमिया की एक सिनर्जी है। भारत में सारे कामों की बिखराव है, इसमें और सिनर्जी लानी पड़ेगी। कोलैबोरेशन बिल्कुल ही उत्तर है। हम आज विश्व की बड़े बड़े विश्वविद्यालय हमारे देश में आए, हम उसमें आशावादी हैं, इसलिए हमने अपना पॉलिसी को सुधारा है। लेकिन इसकी यह अर्थ नहीं है कि हमारी इंटरनल कोलैबोरेशन नहीं हो रहा है। मैं जम्मू में IIT की लोकार्पण उत्सव में गया था। मेरे को सुखद आनंद हुई जब मैंने देखा एम्स जम्मू और IIT जम्मू और IIM जम्मू तीनों मिलके, क्योंकि आज चिकित्सा सेवा में, हेल्थ केयर में मशीन की रोल बढ़ गई है। डायग्नोसिस करने का सारे काम मशीन करता है, टेस्टिंग का और डायग्नोसिस का 30-40% काम डॉक्टर्स करते हैं। उस समय में इंजीनियरिंग एंड मेडिसिन दोनों की कोलैबोरेशन की जरूरत पड़ी है। सिर्फ इंजीनियरिंग और मेडिसिन इलाका में नहीं, दुनिया की जो नया टेक्नोलॉजी आ रही है उसमें सोशियो इकोनॉमिक इम्पैक्ट क्या आ रही है, उसकी हमारी IIT और हमारी ह्यूमैनिटीज की यूनिवर्सिटी की कोलैबोरेटिव काम होने की आवश्यकता है। भारत की नॉलेज, हम सब जो यहाँ बैठे हैं कोई विदेश की विश्वविद्यालय में थोड़े दिन पढ़ने के लिए या पढ़ाने के लिए गए होंगे, लेकिन हमारी फंडामेंटल्स वहीं से बनी है। इसलिए हमें पब्लिक हेल्थ की इतनी बड़ी कोलैबोरेशन की मैं संभावना दिखता हूं, ये कभी था। आजादी की पहले कलकत्ता में एक इंस्टीट्यूट में भी गया, IICB, इंडियन इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ केमिकल बायोलॉजी। उस समय के नेशनल लीडर्स ने अंग्रेजों के समय में अपने नौजवानों को कहा, वैज्ञानिकों को, कि भाई देखो शायद ये आएगा, आज़ादी कुछ दिनों के बाद मिल जाएगा, हमारे देश में मेडिसिन बनाने की कैपेसिटी हो जानी चाहिए। आज़ादी की पहले कॉलोनी के अंदर भारत की वैज्ञानिकों ने, नौजवान वैज्ञानिकों ने इंडियन इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ केमिकल बायोलॉजी के एनविजन किया, वो आज चल रहा है। मित्रों, इस देश में फंडामेंटल्स ऐसे सोचने का है। कभी कभी विस्मृति होती है, कभी कभी डीप्रायोरिटाइज होती है, लेकिन मैं इसमें डॉक्टर चौहान के साथ, प्रोफेसर चौहान के साथ सहमत हूं, इसमें एक क्षण भी विलंब नहीं करनी चाहिए। मैं उस मत का नहीं हूं, कभी डिस्क्रिमिनेशन के मेरे मन में नहीं आता है, क्योंकि लंबे समय तक हम इस विषय पर रहे, क्योंकि हमारी फंडामेंटल्स में एजुकेशन कैन नॉट बी ए कमर्शियल कमोडिटी। लेकिन अनफॉर्चुनेटली, फॉर्चुनेटली भारत की 40% स्कूल सिस्टम प्राइवेट सेक्टर में है। एक सब्सटेंशियल हायर एजुकेशन की सिस्टम प्राइवेट इंस्टीट्यूशंस के पास है। हम आंख बंद करके सारे प्राइवेट इंस्टीट्यूशंस को आइसोलेशन में नहीं डाल सकते हैं, कि आंख बंद करके उनकी मोनोपोलिस्ट अप्रोच को भी चुप नहीं रह सकते। एक बैलेंस की ओर जाना पड़ेगा। एक सरकारी इंस्टीट्यूशन है, इसलिए वो जो चाहे ठीक कर रहा होगा, मैं ऐसे नहीं मानता। आज चैलेंज है कि हमारी 21st सेंचुरी में हमारी डोमेस्टिक पॉपुलेशन की रिक्वायरमेंट क्या है, ग्लोबल कम्युनिटी की क्या रिक्वायरमेंट है। हम ग्रीन एनर्जी के बारे में बात कहते हैं, हाइड्रोजन एनर्जी में भारत डिजिटल इकोनॉमी टाइप की लीडरशिप पोजीशन में जा सकता है, जा ही रहा है, क्योंकि कई सारे नेचुरल एडवांटेज हमारे पास है। हमारी नॉलेज लेवल, हमारी अफोर्डेबिलिटी दोनों आज ग्लोबल कॉम्पिटिटिव पोजीशन पे है। कहां कहां लिवरेज कर सकते हैं लिमिटेड संसाधनों के अंदर, इसके अर्थ नहीं कि इसमें से जीडीपी में स्पेंडिंग ना बढ़े। मैं इस मत का नहीं हूं, और मैं तो इस मत का हूं कि ये धीरे धीरे बढ़ते जाएगा। लेकिन हमें 21st सेंचुरी में ग्लोबल कम्युनिटी की जिम्मेवारी लेने की विजन रखनी चाहिए। कौन सी इलाका में हम स्ट्राइक कर सकते हैं, लो हैंगिंग फ्रूट कहां है, मीडियम टर्म स्ट्रैटेजी क्या होगा, लॉन्ग टर्म स्ट्रैटेजी आने वाले 100 साल के लिए क्या करें। तब एक सिविलाइजेशन जो इंडियन नॉलेज सिस्टम की कंटिन्यूटी की सार्थकता होगी। मैं आप सभी को पुनः बधाई देता हूं, अश्विनी जी की साधु काम के प्रशंसा करने के लिए, आशीर्वाद देने के लिए आप सब लोग आए। और ये विद्वत सभा की जो अपेक्षा है भारत सरकार की शिक्षा विभाग की जिम्मेवार व्यक्ति के नाते, उस अपेक्षा को मैं विश्वास के साथ आपको कह रहा हूं, उसी दिशा में आपकी परामर्श से ही हम आगे बढ़ रहे हैं। आपकी एडवाइस, आपकी कंसल्टेंसी हमारे लिए सर्वोपरि है, और आप ऐसे ही भारत सरकार के साथ जुड़े रहें। बहुत धन्यवाद।
आदरणीय शिक्षा मंत्री जी का बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। I now call upon Dr. Ashwin Fernandez to give the vote of thanks.
Thank you so much, and I'm so honored to have all of you here today for this launch. First and foremost, my really heartfelt gratitude to the Honorable Minister of Education, Sri Dharmendra Pradhanji, for coming. And I know he has a busy schedule, and he's come for this book, even despite, I'm generally involved in the rankings. This has nothing to do with rankings. It's my passion to support nation building and to give back to my motherland. So thank you so much, sir, for sparing your time and coming here. Also to our guest of honor, Dr. Pankaj Mittalji, the Secretary General of Association of Indian Universities, for spending her valuable time. I know she's been busy traveling as well with the AIU conferences, so thank you so much for coming. Also to Professor Virendra Chauhan. He has a commitment, but he has made it here today. I'm so honored to have him and his expertise from prior when he's been with NAC and UGC. I'm honored with all his kind words as well. And to Professor C. Rajkumar, founding Vice Chancellor of OP Jindal Global University, for his critical review of the book, because I thought who else better to give me a critical review than Professor Raj, who does a lot of reading and is in the law space. So we will have a impartial review of the book there. And to all of you, ladies and gentlemen, who have come here from various universities, the press, the television channels, and everybody else, dear friends, family, and those watching online as well, thank you so very much for tuning in. We hope that you will stay with us. As we bid adieu to the minister as he goes out, we will continue for the next hour on deliberating on the future, and the panel will be moderated with all of you involved in this panel with Dr. Pankaj Mittal and Professor C. Rajkumar, and we'll take it forward. I would like to again thank the minister for coming here. After we finish the panel or the meeting with all of you, we'll then go for high tea and book signing on the upstairs floor. Thank you so very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, we bid goodbye to the Honorable Minister. Kindly remain seated for the next part of the program, which is a panel discussion. Esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, I now invite you to the institutional leaders' discussion on India's educational heritage, imagining the future by remembering the past, moderated by Professor Dr. Pankaj Mittal and Professor Dr. C. Rajkumar. I'll just have to see. Sorry. Please, ladies and gentlemen, kindly remain seated. Hand mic. Maybe you could.
Okay, this is a very short, we'll spend a few minutes, maybe half an hour or so to share some reflections. So what we want to do is to throw open this for individual reflections, because there are a lot of people who are running education institutions, who are themselves academics, who have had vast experience of grappling with education. So is there a hand mic here? I believe there's a hand mic, right? Okay. So I'm going to request them, kindly share your reflections on the larger theme of how we remember the past for imagine a future. That's the broad theme of this. And you may reflect on the, not just on the book, but also your own personal journeys and how you think that as the minister and even Dr. Chauhan talked about, from here, where do we go? So that's the broader theme of it. So the floor is open. Raise your hand and please share reflections. If you want to ask a question to us, that's fine. But share your comments. The floor is open. Thank you.
I'm going to help kick off.
Please introduce yourself. We have Vice Chancellor of UPS.
Yeah, why don't you kick it off?
Okay, thank you. My name is Ram. I'm the Vice Chancellor at UPS Dehradun. And Raj, since you mentioned, and also because higher educational institutions have several other things, but one of the things that I feel as a nation, as a society, and as higher educational institutions, and globally also when we go to other top institutions and so on, and when we see domestically, so to say, one of the key differences that I see that the average aspiration levels of our student body, which is a little surprising. I mean, the professors are who they are. I mean, generally, the vibrancy and the average aspiration levels the student body of a particular institution has is kind of, in some sense, directly affects the prestige and kind of the prowess of that institution. Because when the students have drive, then, I mean, lot many things happen in the universities with or without professors. And that reminds me of an interesting story also, because the past also has been discussed and so on. It's a very, very short story which I read recently, and the name of the story is the Ganga parable. And essentially it says that, in Ganges somewhere there was a rock, and in the shadow of the rock there was a group of crabs, and those crabs were, and the flow of the river was, quite a bit. So they were kind of fearful that if we go away too much from the shadow of the rock, then possibly we'll be taken away by the river and we would possibly die. And then there was a crab amongst the group whose name was Siddharth, and he was known as Foolhardy. And this guy was quite, quite a maverick. So one fine day he tells all his fellow crabs that now I have decided that I will experience Ganga, and I'm just letting go the shadow of the rock, and I will swim and flow and ride the river, and I'll see the larger world. All the fellow crabs told him that, you are foolish, you will die, this is for nothing, and you should be safe here and be happy in whatever you have here, live with the group and so on. And this conversation goes on. One fine day, this guy says, enough, I'm just going away. And he kind of moves away from the shadow of the rock, and then of course, because the flow was quite fast, so he kind of immediately taken by the river waves, and he's riding the waves, and he's seeing the world for the first time, and kind of sees that how the world is beyond that rock. And then the fellow crabs, being inspired by his act, they start shouting that Siddharth is Mahan, Siddharth is Mahan, he has conquered the world, he has rode the waves and so on. And Siddharth is shouting back that, we all are the same. You also have the same potential, just let it go, just kind of experience what it is. But of course, his fellow crabs could not hear that. So Siddharth kept shouting that we all are same, you can also do the same. But essentially the fellow crabs kept shouting that Siddharth is Mahan and Siddharth is Mahan. So I think we kind of dwell too much into so many things, and at times we forget that we also have the same potential that possibly our ancestors and predecessors had, and that drive to kind of do things, solve problems, and think big is a challenge which I see on the campuses. I mean, with my limited experience in India.
You can use this mic, sir. We'll take some more comments. Okay. Any other reflections on the topic from anybody?
Hello, I'm Dr. Sundaresh DS. I teach sociology. I completely agree with Professor Pankaj Mittal's point. So we have to encourage, scholars from the Western countries to here. We should send them as an ambassador, like the way you said, that other scholarship, like the Fulbright scholarship are given. But the point is, like, why do the Western faculty students should come India and to study? Because most of the things from social science we study from this source is from the Western scholars only. But in India, we have something, we can also offer. For example, yoga. Yoga is like, anybody listen, they say that it is from India only. So as a private institution, how we can encourage to build an yoga as a cultural ambassador. They should come here, visit here, and they should learn from here. So, as a private head of the institution, how do you? Thank you.
Hi, this is Ankur. I'm a PhD research scholar at UP Jindal. I'm doing my PhD under Professor Dr. C. Rajkumar. I work for internationalization of Indian institutions a lot. I've traveled to about 30, 35 plus countries for recruiting students to Indian institutions, not sending our students abroad. So I have a very unique experience of traveling across Africa and Middle East and South Asia and Southeast Asia, seeing the value that these institutions, the students in these countries see in our institutions. But sometimes I've seen the Study in India campaign that is running for the last 3 years. I fail to see the Study in India campaign actually reaching out to the schools and institutions and colleges in those countries. I mean, they do expose, but they don't make people-to-people contact, as you were rightly mentioning, ma'am. Fulbright scholarships kind of models. Also for the teachers who become our brand ambassadors for the country. I mean, that approach is also something that I feel as a student who has gone out and started promoting Indian institutions has failed that difficulty. I've spent 10 years doing that. Also, the second thing that I feel is missing in our Study in India campaign has been the quality of institutions that go abroad. I've seen a lot of time little poorer private institutions also going abroad and offering, I mean, I will not say scholarships, but discounts. And then that ruins the entire reputation of the country. And when the students come here, I went to Africa a lot of times, a lot of students used to come here, but because of the poor quality of education, institutions that went there without vetting of the rigorous body, the entire country got a bad name, where institutions like, I mean, I used to work with Ashoka and then Jindal for a long time. We also had to face difficulty, even though we were, I mean, top-notch institutions that could compete with world universities. So, I mean, those were a couple of observations that I had.
Very good evening, everyone. I have a couple of quick observation. One on the institution financing model. In ancient, we always got the funding primarily from the society and the villages because institution is for the public good. So that's the prime motto. When it comes to education, it doesn't blur between government or private. It is for the public good. How associations or collective responsibility of everyone together by saying that institution needs support when it comes to public funding, how we can encourage that. That's number one point of observation I would like to look up to people from the dais, so their opinions and suggestions on that. And secondly, there are a lot of infrastructure which is available in the public institution, how it can be shared. For example, taking a classic view on some of the IITs and IITs in particular, they have a huge land pool and the infrastructure as well. How we can cross-collaborate and utilize those infrastructure, irrespective of a student who belongs to a student, irrespective of a private or public, can access those and get the privilege on utilizing the knowledge creation process. Those are my quick two observations. Thank you.
So thank you very much. I mean, very good responses we are getting and very good questions also we are getting. So first about Study in India program. Study in India program is basically promoting many, thank you very much, many students from many countries, basically on the scholarship model that they should come and study in India. But when I went to, I am a member of ICCR General Assembly and the Finance Committee, and then when I saw their scholarships, they have around 4,000 scholarships for students to come and study in India. The most sort of agonizing thing which I found in those scholarships was that it was only meant for government institutions. So they said we cannot be giving the scholarships to the private institutions, howsoever good they are, we will be giving only to the government institutions. So I said, what is the reason? So the reason they said that they are basically doing the free fee reimbursement, so the students don't have to pay the fee. So fee reimbursement in case of private institutions becomes very large, therefore they are not able to do it. So then I said, then let us work out a model where you can do the fee reimbursement with a cap at the fee which is equal to the government university fee. So at least some good institutions, some students will come and see how the private universities are also functioning, because we have very good private universities in our country, and we have equally good and bad government universities, equally good and bad private universities also. So hopefully that will come true and private institutions will be included in the ICCR scholarships. But with regard to the fellowships you are talking about, of course, we cannot be competing in the subjects which are very well developed in foreign countries and where we have most of the Nobel Prize winners are from those countries. But we can always talk about the subjects which are our niche areas. For example, you talked about yoga, Indian culture, Sanskrit. Now it is surprising that more foreign students are wanting to study Sanskrit than the Indian students. So whatever is our, not exactly Indian knowledge system, but whatever is a niche area where we are very good, whether it is Ayurveda or yoga or Indian culture or meditation, spirituality. So there are many, many areas where we are also very good at, and we should be projecting those areas to the world. And there are many students who are wanting to come and study in India in those areas. Regarding the students' aspirations you spoke about, the students' aspirations are really increasing. The students are wanting too much from the teachers now. Rather, it is becoming difficult for the teachers to offer to them what they want, because the teachers are usually, not in every university, but in most of the universities, especially in the government universities, they are used to that routine type of teaching from the book, and then they are mugging up, and then they're reproducing in the examinations. But when you talk of outcome-based education, the outcome-based education cannot be delivered without the teachers changing their pedagogy, changing the way they teach. They have to teach in a manner so that the outcome-based education becomes a reality. But who is doing the capacity building of the teachers? We are not doing that. We are assuming that the teachers will learn on their own, that how to do outcome-based education, how to even set a question paper for an open book examination. All of a sudden, the Vice Chancellor announces this year we will have open book examination without even training the teachers that how to set up a paper for that. So therefore, if the aspirations of the students have to be met, the teachers have to work towards it. More than that, the leadership of the institutions have to work on this, specific area of capacity building of the teachers as well as the students for outcome-based teaching as well as outcome-based learning.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mittal, for those reflections. I'll take the yoga question. I think it's also important that the aspiration for international students to come to India should not only be limited to those things that India is already known for. Now, you mentioned about sociology, for example. There is no reason why India and Indian intellectual traditions should not play leadership role in those aspects which we are not necessarily historically known in other parts of the world, because there are outstanding sociologists, political scientists, historians, others here. So we shouldn't make that mistake of confining Indian intellectual heritage to those limited disciplines where we already have acquired a global reputation and a presence. So it's like, if you look at many of the Western countries, including United States or Europe, it's not, people go there because they have institutions of excellence across disciplines. It's not particular areas alone. If India has to get that global presence and reputation, we need to achieve excellence in all those areas and not limited to things that we already are good at. And yoga is a good example. If we can do that, why not others as well? Regarding your question, Senthil, the public and private divide is one of the major challenges that we are facing in India. We have to start talking about the fact that there is institutionalized forms of discrimination and biases and prejudices that is deeply embedded in the Indian regulatory landscape and the mindset of people when it comes to private deemed and other types of institutions. This is so unfortunate, even when we have 70% of Indian higher education institutions are in the private sector, which includes colleges, and 70% of students in India who are actually studying in private higher education institutions. So if private sector is playing such a large role, I fail to understand why the larger mindset of both regulatory bodies as well as governmental mindset at various levels has been, somewhat both reluctant at times and downright critical in that. And we simply, and by the way, the 6% GDP investment is a pipe dream. It's not going to happen, and we know that that's the reality we are facing. So in that context, the future will depend upon imaginative role of public and private financing of both public and private higher education. In fact, we are in India, we are so stuck up with this idea that public universities will be funded by the government and private universities will be funded by the private sector donors or individual benefactors. But what we don't realize is, if you look at, say, University of California, Berkeley, for example, UC Berkeley is a public university, but the largest resources of UC Berkeley is coming from private philanthropy. Just as Harvard, which is a private university, of course they get private philanthropy. So this whole idea that public universities are state funded and private universities cannot be supported, all of which has to change if we really want to look at the future. The other aspect is about access in terms of resources. Naturally, the private sector, the only way by which private universities can have a more accessible fee structure is that they are also having greater access to resources. I mean, it's actually very unfortunate if you end up calling public universities fee structure, because it's your and my money funding public universities, right? So if Delhi University is charging 1,000 rupees, what we don't realize is that all our taxpayers are putting money so that that fee is lesser. The actual cost of their education is much more than actually what a private university will be spending for something like that. So we have a very poor understanding of the entire role of financing of education. Of course, we need to focus on philanthropy, corporate social responsibility. We need to have tax breaks for those who want to contribute. We need to encourage more and more think tanks, research institutions, and other types of organizations to contribute to funding. Although I must say that I am personally not in favor of for-profit institutions. I don't believe that universities can be run in an effective manner, in a for-profit manner, because many things that universities do simply cannot be measured in monetary terms. And the moment you end up doing that, you will lose standards. In fact, I remember many years ago, Dr. Montek Singh Ahluwalia, the then chairman of the Planning Commission, promoted this idea of a for-profit university. And in one of those meetings, I asked him, can you tell me one good university in the entire world which is a for-profit university? And he could not give an answer. And I said, that's the story. There is not a single university in the entire world which is a good university, public or private, which is run in a for-profit manner. So for-profit idea is anathematic to the idea of a university, and we should recognize that. Talking about Ram's points, Ram, I think it's only fair to say that we need to strike a delicate balance of what we draw from the past and what we want to take into the future. And I personally think, and I'm very happy that the minister made that remark about supremacy, and I have also discussed this with Ashwin. I think today we are in a stage where interdependence and knowledge sharing is the norm. More and more countries are recognizing the importance of knowledge sharing, and India has a very big role to play in that. One of the things, and Ashwin has talked about it in the book also, which is that we are global leaders in frugal innovation. If the Mars mission, in India's successful mission to Mars cost $75 million, the Hollywood movie Gravity had to spend more money than India's successful mission to Mars. So we are global leaders in frugal innovation. We are able to provide fairly advanced levels of excellence in our education at a lesser cost. But that does not mean that we can end up not spending money at all in building world-class institutions. And I think that slowly that recognition is happening. I don't believe the money is going to come from the government. We need to look at a range of alternative sectors. And I've been publicly critical about this foreign education institutions coming to India for this purpose. One of the ostensible reasons was that they want to stop the movement of Indian student capital abroad because they're all going abroad, and somehow if we get them here, but the reality is those students who want to go abroad will keep going abroad till there are a large number of Indian institutions which are outstanding institutions which can provide access. In fact, already we have suffered a bit of embarrassment on that front because Economic Times, I think, had contacted several universities, including Harvard, Yale, and Stanford, and many others, and all of them have said no about the idea of coming to India literally within 48 hours after the announcement of the policy. So we really need to focus on internal institutional empowerment with regard to it. The point about Ankur, what he said, the suffering that happens for many good private universities is that there is a deep sense of pejorativeness associated with the Indian higher education sector, especially the private sector, because of the experience of poorly run private institutions, which ends up undermining the efforts of all others too. So there is no substitute to focus on internal standards for building excellence, and that I believe will be the only thing that will help us in the future. I strongly believe that India can become a destination for higher education, especially for the 50 African countries, many parts of Middle East, almost all parts of South Asia, and many parts of Southeast Asia, because no Western world can offer such a degree of high quality education at such a low cost that we do. This is one of our strengths. That's where all our energy should be put in, and not attempting to get relatively mediocre universities who would come from abroad, who will end up setting up shops here and who will end up charging much higher fees than any public or private university in India, and which will also create other forms of disincentives for them. And also, ultimately, it will suffer a reputational hazard for India as a country when it comes to these failures that are imminent in that process. So our effort should be to focus on how we can reimagine the Indian universities, Indian higher education institutions for the future. We need to be able to invite and welcome foreign universities from around the world to build partnerships and collaborations with Indian universities on all areas, so that we are able to draw their expertise and experience on aspects that we can do better. All I can say is that over 100 years ago, when the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, was in its early stage, we had people like Vikram Sarabhai and Homi Bhabha returning from Cambridge and joining hands with none other than C.V. Raman, who had already got the Nobel Prize. And the early stages of Indian science was built by these individuals in Bengaluru. If they can do that 100 years ago, even before we got independence, we have now so much better situated than we were, how we were to do better. So I want to stop here, and I know that you are all the really committed individuals who have sat through even after the minister left, and so thank you for your presence. And I'm going to ask the distinguished author, Dr. Ashwin Fernandez, to give his final closing comments and the last word for the evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Raj and Professor Mittal, for being here and supporting this rather small round table, I think, with a few distinguished colleagues here. So I would like to conclude here, and will join us for the high tea, which is at the foyer area upstairs. So either you can take the lift or the stairs to go up to the floor immediately after this, and we'll actually have a book signing as well there, and you can have a copy of my book and hopefully promote it on your social media. Thank you so very much for everybody for coming. Thank you.